Why did Luke write his gospel? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we begin our verse-by-verse study of the book of Luke on walking through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Luke chapter 1. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 4. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Luke chapter 1, beginning of verse 1. Inasmuch as many have taken in hand to set in order a narrative of those things which have been fulfilled among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write to you an orderly account, most excellent Theophilus, that you may know the certainty of those things in which you were instructed. As we're going to find in this book, the book of Luke, though it does contain many stories that Matthew and Mark contain, also has a significant amount of material not covered by the other gospel writers, or he adds details that we didn't get from the other gospel writers. One of the unique features is that this gospel is actually a letter written to an individual. How did the gospel of Matthew begin? Matthew 1 verse 1 says, the book of the genealogies of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. How did the book of Mark begin? Mark 1 verse 1 said, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. These gospels begin almost like you would begin a term paper in school. You state your thesis or topic, and then you go about proving or examining your thesis over the course of the paper. Luke's gospel doesn't begin this way. It begins like you would begin a conversation. Verse 1 says, inasmuch as many have taken in hand to set in order a narrative of things which have been fulfilled among us. In starting his gospel this way, Luke is making it very approachable to the average reader. It's not that Matthew and Mark are deficient in any way, for they are not. It's just that the gospel of Luke's unique approach gives the reader a different way to understand the same story. Luke, even though Colossians 4:13 says he was a doctor by trade, also seemed to be the type of person that loved history. He's going to give us a narrative, much like Matthew and Mark do, but he's going to be giving us an ordered narrative. Recall from our study of Matthew specifically that because Matthew was trying to prove that Jesus was the King of the Jews, he set his gospel up into different mini-themes in order to make this clear. Chronology was not that important to him, though from time to time his gospel did follow a chronological order. Mark was more chronological than Matthew, but one of the reasons that we know this is because in many places it follows the order of Luke's gospel. Why is it important to have a chronology of events? In order to give us context. When time was important, Matthew and Mark made sure to include it, like when Jesus was teaching on the Sabbath days. However, because Luke is providing us a history, we're going to get different time periods, like so many months after this event, this other event happened. Giving us this context just adds another layer to the stories that we've covered thus far and shows us that Jesus was much busier than we ever even imagined from Matthew and Mark. Was Luke an eyewitness of what he was telling? No, and Luke readily admits that, a fact that the reader needs to understand. Eyewitness accounts and second-hand accounts are different. For in the former, we're relying solely on the memory and truthfulness of the eyewitness, while in the latter, not only must we trust the memory and truthfulness of the eyewitness or source material, but we must also trust that the one who gathered the information is reporting to us exactly what they have learned, not adding or leaving out important details. But lest we think that second-hand accounts are unreliable, let's not forget that we consume second-hand reporting all of the time. When we watch the news, we're generally receiving second-hand information like Luke provides here. When we read history books, we're generally receiving second-hand information. The trustworthiness of second-hand accounts has everything to do with the sources that are used. Are these sources eyewitnesses or not? And are they reputable and reliable? What are Luke's sources? They are people who are eyewitnesses. And even though these eyewitnesses are not named, we can trust their memories of events because we can compare the things that are written to the other Gospels that we do have. If Luke reports that Jesus was born in Nazareth, while Matthew makes it clear he was born in Bethlehem, one or both of these Gospels are wrong, and therefore it casts a shadow on other things that they report on. However, if the Gospels agree on the events that they have in common, then we have no reason not to trust the material in Luke that neither of the other Gospels chose to include. Luke did this kind of research too, for he says that he didn't simply take the eyewitness accounts at face value, he investigated further in order to possess a perfect understanding of course being guided by the Holy Spirit. If you only have one eyewitness, you may not have the whole story, for the eyewitness could be forgetting certain things or be lying. No, Luke went out and confirmed their stories, for there were plenty of people who observed this Jesus of Nazareth while he was alive. So since Luke was so meticulous in his research, we can have confidence that what we have is what really happened. And because it's written more chronologically, it is relatively easy to follow. The man who Luke was writing to is a man named Theophilus. This man was a Gentile and a Christian who had been instructed in the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. He was a man who obviously wanted to know more about Jesus, and who Luke thought needed to know more about Jesus, which is the reason he wrote this gospel. We'll continue with Luke chapter 1, the Lord willing, in the next episode. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Luke chapter 1, verses 5 to 17, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.